we're learning the Dvar Malchut, the speech given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1991. And he's talking about how every Jew has to be a menorah and illuminate himself and illuminate the world. And it should be done in a way that the world itself shines. Not that we shine it up, but the world itself shines. And this is, of course, facilitated by the fact that the world, in fact, is being created by God. And the world, in fact, wants to shine. And that all we're doing is just revealing the truth, that the world is this amazing miracle every instant, and that every instant is holy and special and unique and interesting and alive. But it's our job to reveal this, that the world itself should shine this up. But first of all, we have to do it to ourselves. First of all, we have to reveal in ourselves. How do we do this? By thinking about God, about thinking about the Creator and the Jewish people, especially because this is especially directed to the Jewish people, that we have to think about that when we do the Torah and etc. The Torah, how the Torah is our chance. That's our lifeline and our window to the infinite, that we can put infinite into this physical world and fix up the whole world. But first of all, we have to fix up ourselves, that we ourselves feel the godliness within ourselves. So there's two things, fixing up the world and fixing up ourselves. So it says the difference between these two types of service, namely working with yourself and working with the world, simply speaking, is working with holiness. That's working with yourself. And working in things of the world. Working with yourself, that's mainly in Torah, commandments, prayer, holy things. Working with the world means working with mundane things. Your job, your house, your car, your customers, your next door neighbors, your friends. That's working in the world. It says that's avodat b'inyanei kedusha, working with holy things, Torah and commandments, and working in the world. Ad achilik ha'chitakton, to the lowest thing in the world, like we said, even briot, even Jews, people, that the only good thing you can say about them is that God created them. This is like the difference between the 5 books of the Torah and the 7 books of the Torah. Remember, that's the whole topic we're talking about over here. There's one opinion in the Talmud in Shabbat that you can divide the 5 books of Moses. Instead of saying there's 5, there's 7 books of Moses. Where'd you get the other 2 books from? It says because this book of Numbers, instead of being 1, you can make it into 3. How do you make it into 3? I'm just repeating what we learned before. In this week's Torah portion, there happens to be right in the middle 2 sentences. And those 2 sentences are talking about when the Jews traveled in the desert and the ark moved from one place. So everybody moved with the ark. And when it settled, everybody settled. 2 sentences. Those 2 sentences, according to this opinion, are 1 full book of the Torah. So if so, the book of Numbers is divided into 3 books. These 2 sentences as 1 book. All of the sentences before, all the chapters before these 2 sentences, that's another book. And the sentences come after, to the end of Numbers, is another 3rd book. It says, what's the point of it? It says the point of it is that if we divide the book like we said, and these 2 sentences become a book in itself, then the new book that we made that came after this new division, it starts off with bad things. And says the Rebbe, that's the whole point. Bad things are here so that we can fix them up. Bad things are here so that we can fix them up. You have to avoid bad things, of course, but our job is not to abandon bad things. Some bad things have to be abandoned, but it's rare. We have to fix up bad things. We have to find if you put a little bit of good sometimes in the bad things, a little bit of education into people, a little bit of hope, a little bit of love, a little bit of care, then sometimes that can, there's all these stories that were written. They used to have these books that were called, what is it, the chicken soup for this, all these stories, of kids that were about to commit suicide and nobody knew it. And somebody just said, one of the other kids said, hello to them. How are you feeling? Just some strange kid said hello. And that hello saved their lives. If so, the world is a meaningful place. Right? Just one little word. And that can be enough to save the whole situation, to save everything. One little bit of light can save the whole thing. So that's how we fix up the lowest things in the world, by making a little light, but we have to fix them up. We have to fix things up. I'll tell you afterwards. I'll tell you the story about Viktor Frankl. That'll be my story for today. Okay, I'll tell you the story. Okay, we go.
This is the story for the day?
That'll be the story for the day, but I'm not saying it now. I'll say it afterwards.
Later.
Yeah, later. You get the story for the day. I'll say it for the good story though. So so this is, you have to work even with the lowest things in the world. The lowest things in the world. And listen, maybe the best story of this working with the lowest things in the world is the story with Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was thrown into a den of hungry lions. Now, lions are not compatible. I mean, there's some people that try to tame lions. You always hear about these tragedies that happen to these people who bring up lion cubs from youth, and then, they perform for them, and then they eat them up afterwards. Lions are not, so 100% tameable. They're not tameable. Lions like to eat people. They like to eat the meat. So Daniel was thrown into a den of lions that he did not tame these lions, and the lions were definitely hungry, and they were definitely, murderous lions, and the lions didn't do anything to him. And afterwards, when he was taken out from this, and the advisors of the king that told the king to throw him in, when they were thrown in, it says that the lions ate them up immediately. Their bones didn't even touch the ground. They were so hungry. Why was it that Daniel all of a sudden calmed these lions down? It says because Daniel was thinking about God. He was thinking about the Creator. And these lions are also creations. And so he was thinking God will do whatever he wants to. And the lions, they were around someone who thought about God. It's something like Noah in the ark. When he thought about this, all of a sudden, all the lions, the animals were calm. God made a whole thing, right? Just because you're doing what you're supposed to do, you put a little bit of light, a little bit of truth into you put the Creator into the creation, so everything becomes a little bit calmer, a little bit more normal. And that, says the Rebbe, each one of us has the ability to do it. Not with don't jump in the next time you go to the zoo, don't try it. Jump into this. It probably won't work, but you're not, because we're not to the level of Daniel, but we are to a certain degree. We can, quell the lions, the evil of this world. To a certain degree, we can calm it down by having a good attitude, by thinking about the Creator. No, it says, according to how it is in holiness, how it comes down below, whether we're talking about the Jewish people, whether we're talking about the Torah, that the Torah was divided into these two levels also. We have 5 and 7. 5 is talking about holiness. 7 is talking about dealing with the world. 7, these are the 7 candles, the lamps of the menorah. They correspond to the 7 different types of Jews. Jews that are more on the side of kindness, sort of the more of power, more of mercy. This corresponds to the 7 emotions. Some people serve God from love. Some people serve God from fear. Some people serve God from rulership. Look at organizing things. Similarly, also there's differences in the Jewish people into 5 levels. This corresponds to the 5 books of the Torah. And we can say that's what's hinted at in this Torah portion. The 5, it says, whether we learn in Pirkei Avot, we in the Chabad, a lot of other groups also, we read the chapters of the fathers until Rosh Hashanah. most people just read 7 weeks. They read Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the Father. There's 6 chapters, and they read from Passover until Shavuot. There's 7 weeks, and every week they read another one. The first week they don't read. But we in Chabad, we read from Passover. We read another chapter every week until Rosh Hashanah. And the week that it corresponded to over here was there were 5 pupils to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. I think that's the second chapter of Pirkei Avot, right? Second chapter? 5 pupils there were, that's right, second chapter of Pirkei Avot. It says there were 5 chapters, there were 5 pupils, Rabbi Shimon, Yochanan ben Zakkai. 5 pupils, number 5. And this is explained in the Meforshim that we have to say that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he had a lot of pupils. He was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was the head of the Sanhedrin. And they said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he got out of Jerusalem, they were destroying Jerusalem in the Second Temple, he said, give me Yavne and his wise men. He was the head. So therefore, he must have had a lot more than 5 pupils. But the explanation was is that each one of his pupils and all the people who learn the Torah in general can be divided into 5 different types of pupils. And the Rebbe explains in other people how these 5 different pupils are. All it is also, and so it is also, and the Torah is divided into 7 books of the Torah. There's the 7 books of the Torah and the 5 books of the Torah. Just like there's 5 different types of Jews and 7 different types of Jews. So there's also 7 books of the Torah and 5. One of the differences between them, the 5 books of the Torah, or if we say there's 7, is 5, this is mainly in working in holiness. In general, a person working on himself, doing Torah, learning Torah, doing the commandments. And 7, this corresponds to working with the world. Like it said with Aaron, you have to makar of the brios, even the lowest life. You have to, the lowest forms of existence, you have to use them the way the Torah wants. So 5 is talking about remaining in the realm of things that are already holy, just to increase holiness. And 7 is talking about things that are not holy, but making them holy. What could feel like it is in the emotions, the upper emotions of God. There are 5 emotions of God from Chesed until Hod. Those are the main emotions. That it says Yesod goes outside of the body. Like it's known that the sphere of the 5th is Hod. This is the end of the main emotions of God. Hod. And the sphere of Shishis and Shvis, which is Yesod and Malchus, this is already how God goes out of himself, so to speak. He gives the Alma the Pruda, this world of separation. So the 5 emotions of God, this is dealing with, so to speak, the body of God. And 7 is talking about Yesod and Malchut. That's how God, so to speak, comes out of himself and gives to the world. This is one of the differences between the Jewish people. Jewish people, kafishem, as they are divided into 7 levels of Jews, corresponding to the 7 branches of the menorah. This includes all the levels of the Jewish people, 7. These are the lowest levels of the Jews, even those people who are far away from Torah, and all you can say about them is that God created them. That's the number 7. The 6th level, the 6th and the 7th level, that's the outside, so to speak, Jews. But as the Jews are divided into 5, this corresponds to the 5, how the Torah is divided into 5. This is mainly in the holiness of the Jews, different levels of holiness, different levels of serving God. So 7 is talking about different ways of refining the world, and 7, that's 7. And 5 is talking about ways of refining ourselves, elevating ourselves. Similarly, it's also the difference between the Torah and the normal way, a regil, namely 5 books of the Torah. That's what everybody says, the 5 books of Moses. And like it says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 pupils, 5 types of pupils. Since that the main thing of the Torah is holy, so it's 5. The Torah is a holy book, and it's meant to increase holiness in the world. But because the Torah also has to work in the world, and the world was created in 7 days of creation, and the whole Torah was only given to make peace in the world, therefore there's also the division of 7 books of the Torah. This is how the Torah works in the world, including also what's called the 6th and the 7th level of the Torah, Yesod and Malchut, how God affects the world, physical world. And this is also fitting to the idea of the 7 books of the Torah. The 5 books, the first 5 books of the Torah, right? Even, let's say there's 7 books of the Torah, right? Let's say according to our new division. So the first 5 books, according to this new division, are all dealing with holy things. This is talking about like their names, Breshit, Shemot, Vayikra, in the beginning of Bamidbar, and Vayihi bin Sor Aaron. That's the 5 books of the Torah. Breshit, there we go, where is it? Whatever. Oh, Breshit is God creating the world. Shemot, God gave the Torah. Vayikra, God called out to Moses from the tent of meeting. Bamidbar, the Jewish people went into the desert to receive the Torah. And this 5th book of the Torah, according to the new division, these 2 sentences, when the ark traveled in the desert. All these 5 things are connected to mainly holy things. God created the world, the names of the Jewish people, God called to Moses, the counting of the Jewish people in the desert, and when the ark traveled. That's the first 5 books of the Torah, if you divide it into 7. So the first 5 books are all holy things, which is not the case in the 6th book of the Torah. That begins with a bad thing. The Jewish people were complaining. And after that, it talks about the sin of Miriam. And after that, it talks about the sin of the spies. And then after that, it talks about the sin of Korach. Bad things. And also the 7th book of the Torah, which that's what we call the book of Deuteronomy. But now it's become the 7th book, right? Because we added 2 books to the Torah. So the 7th is Elu Devorim. These are the 7th book of the Torah, with the book of Deuteronomy, which now has become 7. This is all words of reproof of how God is telling the Jews off, how they didn't act properly in the desert. Since that from the 6th book of the Torah there's a place for bad things to come into the world. The 6th book of the Torah, we say now, is the Jewish people were complaining and they didn't want to go into the land of Israel and they rebelled against Moses and etc. So that gave the place for the 7th book of the Torah, which is Moses telling the people off, reproving them. Therefore, this book, the 7th book of the Torah, the book of Deuteronomy, which now becomes number 7, this becomes that the Torah itself descended. What do you mean the Torah itself descended? And that the Torah, up to now, Moses said that God spoke to me. The 5th book of the Torah, now it's become the 7th book. This is Moses speaking himself. Of a biyoto katuv b'Torah, because it's one of the books of the Torah, so therefore it's all holy. But the fact of the matter is that there's a place now that we can say that the Torah has to come into the world and fix the world up. So if we say there's 5 books of the Torah, so everything is holy. If we say there's 7 books of the Torah, then we can look and see that only the first 5 deal with holy topics. The last 2 begin with the people complaining and people refusing to go into Israel. And then the 7th book of the Torah, which now has become the 7th, talks about Moses reproving the Jewish people, telling the Jewish people how bad they were in the desert and how they made trouble for him with the golden calf and etc. But on the other hand, this book of the Torah, and even more, I'm sorry, also the book, also any book of the Torah, and even more, this book begins and contains in it Balot Chatanerot. This chapter where we're making this division, this is the chapter talking about how Aaron lit the menorah in the temple. This chapter, Va'alotcha, which is dividing the Torah into 7, and it comes out that the last 2 books are not good. But this chapter, Va'alotcha, is talking about an amazingly wonderful thing, that Aaron lit up the 7 lamps, and the 7 lamps, the flame went up on their own. They independently advertised God. Even the last 2, the bad things. This, the fact that the 7 lamps lit up, this gives the power that the light of God, the Ner Mitzvah and Torah Or, can reach even the lowest places. That even there, it will bring about Shalahavet Olam Yalel, that even the lowest places can be connected to God on their own. Shemoral, this indicates on the completion and the true Torah by means of tshuva. Ad shleimus tshuva, the complete tshuva. Shal Yudei, by means of this, it goes up on its own. And I'll tell you a story now. This won't be the story I'm going to tell. Hamalashel me'alel, that it goes up on its own. This comes by means of tshuva, return to your true identity because of sins. So it comes out that by the tzaddikim, that's like the first 5 books of the Torah, until the place of Bali Tshuva, they can't stand in the place where Bali Tshuva are there, because the tzaddikim never overcame their nature, which overcoming your nature is almost impossible to do. You need a lot of help from God to change your nature. And there's a million excuses that people have, and a million really good reasons that people have not to change their nature. Not to change their nature. Not to do the Torah, not to do the commandments, to do things that are forbidden to do, right? There's a million really good reasons to go against the Torah. And they're all tied with nature. So for a person to go against his nature and change his nature just because God says he should, and without any thinking about any rewards or feeling good, and when you do sins, you feel good and you get rewards. And now you're going to change, that's almost impossible. It says even tzaddikim can't do it. Even people that never had any problems, that a Baal Tshuva can change his nature, that's higher than anything else. Then the Zadonos Nasaka Zechios, then his purposeful sins become merits, and they become real merits, because by means of this, you come to a tremendous level of love of God. That's the 7th chapter of the Tanya. Okay, now I'll tell you a short story, and then we'll continue. I told the story before, but it's a good story, but I'll tell it again.
You finished the Hayom Yom already?
I didn't. We're not finished with this either. I used to learn in a kollel. I lived in Bnei Brak. And in Bnei Brak, how do you make money in Bnei Brak? You learn in kollels. So I used to learn in kollels. You sat and you learned, and they pay you. They pay you a pittance. They pay you almost nothing, but that money goes a long way that they pay. The fact is, the money is blessed. Anyway, so I learned in this kollel, and it was a nighttime kollel. The name of the kollel was what was it called? The Beit Yaakov, Beit Yosef.
Lubavitcher?
No, not at all. It was Navardak, a kollel. I learned in all these different kollels. Anyway, so none of them were Chabad. In Bnei Brak, there were, but I don't know. Chabad is always poor. Anyway, so I learned in these kollels. So the one of them, the Rosh Yeshiva was Satmar. He was a Satmar, a young guy, and he was a genius. It was a genius person. And he used to walk to me. He knew that I was from Chabad. And Satmar, it was like officially Chabad. Satmar didn't like Chabad Satmar was officially, they were against Chabad because Chabad didn't take the same, how do you say, uh, anyway, externally, Chabad didn't treat Zionism and Zionists the way that Satmar thought they should. Satmar thought that Zionism and Zionists just completely bad, and you have to just curse them out, and they're the worst in the world. And the fact of the matter is that Chabad thinks that Zionism is much worse than Satmar thinks that it is. But Zionists are not. Zionists are not. The Zionists, they're Jews. Anyway, so he used to walk together with me home. And it's true, that they were against Chabad because Chabad didn't demonstrate, this opposition to this. But the Satmar people, they're Jews, and they're also very warm Jews. They're very warm, and they're very, they give a tremendous amount of charity. Anyway, that was their official thing. So we were walking home together. This is all like 40 years ago. And he would walk very quickly, and I would walk very quickly. He was full of energy, So he walked quickly, and he was so he would just talk. He would do all the talking, and he would explain this Tosfos and this Rashi and this. And he was very deep, and he would bring this. And as we were walking one time, he said, "Listen, I see you're a nice person. I see that you're a normal person. And I see that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is holy. I've read some of the things that he's written. He's just a tremendous genius. How is it that you don't hate the Zionists? How can the Rebbe talk to the Treifa Zionists? How can he do it? The Treifa Tzioni." So I said to him, because we believe that there's such a thing as tshuva, that people can, reveal their true Jewish identity, tshuva. And we were walking really quickly, working fast. And I just said, I sort of looked over to the side. I said, because we believe that, these people are Jews and they can do tshuva. And I turned to him to say something more, and he wasn't there. He wasn't there. So I looked. What happened? Maybe he fell down. Maybe, I said something. He got angry, ran away. I saw I was standing back where I said tshuva. I was standing. So I went back to him. I thought maybe there's something happened. And he had long pants. He was going, tshiva, 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 tshiva. It's saying he never thought that was a possibility. It wasn't part of his formula that people could actually do tshuva and change. They could do tshuva and change. Impossible, right? And the reason he thought that was because he was a holy guy, and he was totally involved in Torah and the commandments. And it was incomprehensible for him that a person that did sins could actually change to be someone like him. How could it possibly be? Where do you get the power to do a thing like that? It's just like you made the wrong choice. You're stuck. That's it. And the Rebbe is trying to tell us that it's not so. Even though it's true, it's almost impossible to do tshuva, but every Jew will do it. Every Jew without exception. And he says, where about tshuva stands is that even tzaddikim, big tzaddikim, can't stand there. But ulai, and maybe we can say that this is the reason why, that the beginning of that, and that's the idea of the 7 books of the Torah. Therefore, now our new 6th book of the Torah begins, and we said, now this is the last half of the book of Numbers, that the people were complaining. And that's what's written in Ba'alotcha, the Nerot, to illuminate the candles, the lamps, because that's the whole reason why we light the lamps up, is in order to give these complainers the ability to do tshuva and to return. And even though that it says that they are complainers, they were like complainers just like they weren't really deeply complaining against God. They were just sort of like that. And why? Because the Jewish people, they really can never really rebel against God. They're just like rebellers. But the true intention that they have is that they're doing because they want to return to God. They want to return to, that's the true Jewish identity. And this has drawn the power that we can work in the physical world and transform the lowest things in the world, that they themselves should shine on their own. And the power to do this comes from the book which is before it, the 5th book, and that is when the new, now these 2 sentences, which now that became the 5th book of the Torah, is when the ark traveled, Moses said, rise up, God, and cast away your enemies, and those who hate you should be dispersed before you. And when the ark settled, They said, return God the thousands and 10,000s of the Jewish people. That the power of the Torah, that's what gave the ability to fix up the world. And this we will continue with and finish, God willing, tomorrow, Friday. God willing, tomorrow. Okay, now let's do the Yom Yom.
Rabbi, when you lived in Bnei Brak, were you Lubavitch or you came to
Sure,
Lubavitch?
of course, yes.
Oh, okay. I was wondering how you were in Bnei Brak.
Well, I'll tell you in 1 second. 1 second. Let me use this. Yom Yom. My wife is a lecturer. She's an excellent public speaker. Even before I knew her, she was a public speaker, excellent public speaker. And I met her by the Rebbe. It's a whole long story, but I met her by the Rebbe. She went into Yechidus by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told her that she has to live in Israel and that as soon as she gets back, she'll have work. And sure enough, she got back to Israel. She went back to Israel. We just met. We ended up getting married like over a year later. Because I didn't want to get married at all. They just forced me to meet her, and so we met. And then I just wanted to sit and learn Torah. But it ended up we getting married. Anyway, so she came back to Israel immediately. In the airport, she met some fellow that knew her, that had an organization, and he gave her a job that she would be the chief lecturer, and she was okay. And she got a job. So she was working in Bnei Brak, and she knew a lot of people in Bnei Brak. And so she was the one that, from all these people that she knew, she got me arranged to learn in all these different kollels. So from that, I got to know a lot of different people and a lot of different types of Jews, and a lot of it's very interesting. So that's why we lived in Bnei Brak, and they helped us find a place to live. And then so I lived, that's where we lived. We stayed there for 4 years. And then my wife got a job as the headmaster in a school in Kfar Chabad, a girls' school. And I also got a job teaching in this Baal Tshuva yeshiva. And so we decided we're going to move to Kfar Chabad, and we did. We moved. There was a place called Kfar Chabad Beit. That's where the girls' school where she lived. We lived there for a couple of years, and then I was teaching in this yeshiva, and then we moved over. And that's it. Okay, here we go. Let's go. Now, that's why I lived in Bnei Brak for 4 years. But I met a lot of very interesting people there.
Yeah, all types over there.
All sorts of people. But I also did Mitzrayim. I also did Mitzrayim in a big marketplace over there in a place called Pardes Katz. Pardes Katz in those days was a totally non-religious Sephardic place that was dangerous. People didn't even go there. And I started doing Mitzrayim over there. And then afterwards, Shas came. And Shas, they made a whole big thing. People started becoming religious. Now it's just packed with Chabad schools and else. Okay, here we go. What are we doing? Oh, we're recording. Oh, wow.